comfortably zoned with the Zigzag Man in Alameda, California, pushing on the doors of life marked pull and fighting the unholy trinity as we go. Big business, organized religion, and government. I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, and it is not raining. It's a beautiful day. It rained one day. It was nasty, and the drought is still a long way from being over. But we have sunshine today. It's a cold, brisk day in Northern California, which means 60 degrees. So eat your hearts out wherever you are. This is the best weather in the world. I'm lucky enough to be bi-coastal today, live from New York, author of a book on one of my boyhood, I can't say he was a hero, he was a foe. I was a Giant fan. He was a Dodger. He was a great Dodger. His name was Clem Labine, and my guest is Richard Elliott from New York City. How are you, sir?
Good, Ralph. Thank you for inviting me on, Ralph.
Hey, you were a little under the weather, and I'm glad that you're better. You're recovering from a bout of pneumonia.
That's it.
And I'm glad it's going better for you, and I'm glad you're on the upswing. You got a bunch of book signings and stuff scheduled all over the place, so you got to stay healthy.
Right.
Clem Labine, how the heck did a Brooklyn boy who left Brooklyn when you were like 4 years old move to Rhode Island, where I don't know, did you follow college basketball in Rhode Island as I get off the subject?
Yeah, I did, but do more now with Providence, with the Providence College Friars, and mainly.
You remember the greatest rebounder Rhode Island ever had was a kid named Art Stevenson. Do you remember Artie Stevenson?
I don't remember Artie Stevenson. For whom did he play, Ralph?
He played in about 1965, I would say, to 69, was a draft choice of the Celtics. I think he was the last guy cut by the Boston Celtics, and he passed away not very early. He was like about 40 when he passed away, maybe 30 if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. But Artie and I went to the Flushing YMCA together. We were buddies when we were 10 years old.
That's wonderful.
And he was just a great kid and obviously incredibly talented. I miss him, and that's the only thing I know about Rhode Island.
Well, let me just respond to that. I went to Brown University as an undergraduate, and I was a fairly good basketball player in high school. I was captain of my team. I'm not bragging. It was a small school, but I ended up at Brown, and I figured in my childhood fantasies, of course, that I could make the Brown University team if I were captain of the classical high school team, see, Ralph. But when I arrived at Brown for tryouts, there was this young man named Alan Fishman.
Who I went to camp with.
Who was contending for point guard against me, and Fishman had just lost the national championship to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And so I had
high school. Yes.
So I came up against this 5'8" Fishman, and when I first looked at him, I said, I can beat him out. I'm stronger than he is. Well, he just ran rings about me, and that ended my college basketball dreams. Alan Fishman ended my dreams.
Yeah. Let me tell you something, Richard. Alan Fishman was a boyhood campmate of mine. He was coached by Bernie Kersner at Erasmus, who was the boys' camp director when I went to Kittatinny Camp in the Poconos. Alan Fishman played in Israel. He played professional ball in Israel. If he weren't a genius, gone to Brown like yourself, Alan Fishman would have played in the NBA if he weren't more interested in an Ivy League education, much like yourself. So I'm sure that although you didn't rise to heights in the basketball world, you did quite well for yourself. Published author. Now we got to talk about Clem Labine.
Fine, it's fine.
How did you pick him to write about?
I didn't pick him. He was in my life every day, Ralph. There was an irony here. Even though I was born in Brooklyn, my life with Clem didn't start until Woonsocket. See, Clem was older than I, and Clem was my father's, Clem worked in the shipping room at my dad's factory in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. As a high school sophomore, he was looking for summer work. And although my dad was older than he was, they struck up a fast friendship. And so starting in 1942, Clem worked high school with my dad during his high school years as we needed people in the shipping room. We were in full war production. Well, Clem and my father formed such a bond that when Clem went to into Newport News and was drafted into the service as a paratrooper, he came out. He always kept his position at Dad's company, off seasons, and after 62, when he left the Mets and the Mets got rid of him, and he ended his baseball career, he came back full time to Dad's company and became the general manager of the sportswear division. We had a big company, Ralph, and Clem and my dad became very, very close friends.
Obviously, yeah.
Sure, I'll tell you how close, Ralph. When Clem played ball, he won 3 rings. He won the 55 ring, which he always wore. He won a 59 ring when they beat Chicago White Sox. That ring he gave to his son, JR, my friend. And the 60 ring, the Pittsburgh Pirate ring, he gave to my dad. That was how tight that friendship was. And so I grew up with my childhood baseball hero over at the house as Dad's best friend. So I never knew it any other way. In my youth, I thought everybody knew their hero. Everybody knew their hero as a kid. Wasn't true. I got lucky. And my dad died early. And so Clem morphed from being my childhood hero into my friend, into a business associate as I took over Dad's company. And then when Dad passed away, he became my confidant. He became a surrogate father to me. So he and I, my first picture with Clem is at 5 years old, sitting on his lap after the 51 playoffs when he'd come home to Rhode Island. So as if I picked him to write the book, he was a huge influence in my life. It's still to this day.
Tell me something we don't know as fans about Clem Labine that you left out of the book. Something that you wish you might have put in to make us to make the book. On second thoughts, you look back. What could have you put in that really describes Clem in a way that you didn't, or maybe embellish on something?
Yeah, there are a few things that I agonized over and I left out. And I'll tell you what they are. Actually, one of them I'll tell you. I was not going to tell anybody because I'm thinking about a second book about Clem, just his 56th season. Of course, Scott Simon has written a wonderful book called The Last Good Season, which really analyzes the 56 Dodger year. But Clem is continually a side note in that book. So I might approach Clem's 56th season as a separate book. But forgetting that, Ralph, I'll tell you one thing. 1956, the Dodgers, of course, lost in 7. Clem won that wonderful 6th game against Bob Turley. Clem went the distance, tied the series at 3-3, and then, of course, the Dodgers got shellacked in Game 7. But much like 55, Clem came home to Woonsocket as a hero. And I left out the 56 celebration because I was going to include it. But the 56 celebration in December of 56 really was something special because when the celebration was thrown and when the exhibition games, they were played, but it was too cold. It wasn't like 55 when the celebration for Clem still had good weather. The highlight of that 56 return to Woonsocket was that my dad had gotten in touch with Jackie Robinson, and Jackie agreed to come to Woonsocket to celebrate and honor Clem's his whole career, but his 56th season. Wow. At that celebration, Dad got a picture of Clem and Jackie on December 5th, sitting in a place called the Joyland Ballroom. And I'm going to send you that picture after we get off the phone today. Now that I've talked about it, well, what the hell?
All right.
So that picture was taken on December 5th. I have all of the speech that Jackie made. He was the master of ceremonies. And in that speech, interestingly, Ralph, he talks about acknowledging getting older, wouldn't give his age, but acknowledged getting older, and said, but he still looks forward to another year or two playing with Clem. Now, did Jackie know that his career was coming close to an end? Probably. But Jackie, according to what he said on December 5th, and I have the photograph and the actual speech he gave, and all of the newspaper reports from that celebration, the date being December 5th was 8 days before the Dodgers tried to sell him to the Giants. So I have
Dick Littlefield,
yeah, $30,000 and the old saying play, yeah, Dick Littlefield. Well, so the picture we have, excitingly enough, is the last picture of Jackie ever at a public appearance as a Dodger and as a major league player. In retrospect, I should have had a second chapter, which was the second homecoming, see, because then I could have talked about the closeness of Jackie and Clem more. I mean, for Jackie Robinson, at that point in his life, not feeling 100%, to schlep down to Woonsocket, Rhode Island in the rain, they picked him up in the train. They tried to have a little cavalcade, but the weather didn't cooperate. But I'm going to send you a picture with the bartender holding a sign over their heads that you're going to love, Ralph. Okay?
Oh, can't wait.
Because you've brought it out. I'll tell you two other quick ones. You asked.
Please.
And once you get me going on Clem and my Dodgers, it's hard to stop. I'll tell you two other quick ones. The first one was when Sal Maglie was brought across to the team in the mid-50s. I forget the exact date or the circumstance, but Maglie joined the Dodgers. They asked Clem if he'd be willing to room with Maglie temporarily till they could sort things out. And, of course, Clem was very agreeable. And so they had the dinner in the room. They stayed at the Hotel Bossert all the time, so they had dinner in the room. And they have their dinner delivered on these trays. And so they finish up eating, and Maglie, without saying a word, with no expression on his face, Sal Maglie walks to the window, opens the window, and throws the entire tray down. And Clem is shocked, and he says to Maglie, "What the hell did you just do?" And Maglie calmly turns around and says, "Oh, it's okay. It didn't hurt anybody. It just landed on the balcony below." And never explained it any further to Clem. And for the rest of his life, Clem would shake his head about that. He said he would just try to tell a story, and he'd say, and I looked at Maglie for a smile. Was he doing it for effect? Was this the real Sal Maglie? And Clem never quite figured that one out.
Wow.
I might have put that in. And the last one I'll tell you, which I sort of wish I had put in the book, but again, I had reasons to want to include this in the next book. But in retrospect, it was 59, and the Dodgers had won the '59 series. Clem did not have a particularly good series. In fact, Larry Sherry was starting to emerge as the closer for the team. But Clem was roommates.
He won the World Series car that year, did Larry Sherry?
Yeah, and he was still, and some of the time he was pitching to his brother Norman, who was the catcher on that team.
That's right.
Yeah. So Clem's driving home with Padres, who was younger than Clem and single. And many people know the stories of Padres being single. He loved the girls, and got himself in trouble with some of the people that were his employers. He was chasing some of their daughters. I mean, Padres or something. But this story is
Company Inc. You never dip your pen.
Yeah. So Padres and Clem, of course, Padres was a New York State guy. So Padres and Clem were going to drive home together. And I forget which car it was. I have a photograph, but I don't have it with me, Ralph. But they were driving home, and when they left L.A., it was hot. So Padres, who really didn't give, who was really a free spirit,
right.
Padres gets in the car, and it had air conditioning, but it was hot. Padres chose to drive in his boxer shorts. And Clem looked at him and said, "You think that's, what if we have a breakdown?" I shall put my pants on. So they head north. Their plan was to head north towards probably Chicago and then cut due east to get home. Well, in the interim, the weather went downhill and it got cold, and they drove for about 22 hours. So they made some good distance north. And Clem says when they got to the first night stop, they pulled into whatever motel they were going to stay at. Padres was still in his boxer shorts. Clem was now dressed. Clem knew it had dropped to 38 degrees. They opened the doors to get out, and Clem makes the assumption that Johnny Padres will get dressed. So Clem leads the way into the motel, turns around, and Johnny Padres is standing behind him at this very nice roadside motel in his old two-day worn boxer shorts, and Clem just shook his head at him. And Padres looked at him and said, "What?" And again never bothered to explain it to Clem, why he thought that was funny. But there are many of those stories. Ralph, I won't keep you on forever. See,
no,
Ralph,
I want you to keep me on forever. Listen to me a second. I want to ask you the question that I've been dying to ask somebody for maybe 25 years. Roger Kahn did a book, Boys of Summer.
Yep.
There was also a video put out about Boys of Summer.
Yeah.
And the only thing I remember from that video, or not the only thing, but one of the most poignant memories, was that of Clem Labine Jr. He had just returned from Vietnam.
Yep.
And he lost a leg or an arm.
He got his whole leg blown off. Yep.
He got his leg blown off.
He stepped on a landmine.
And I remember that we're all the same age. You, right. Me, and him, right?
Yep.
So imagine, I can't even think of Vietnam. I was in the Air Force. I was stationed in California. Never went to Vietnam. Can't even think without my blood curdling about the war, the experience, the individuals, the lives lost, families split apart. It was horrible.
Yeah, like America split apart. America split apart. America altered forever. Yep.
Absolutely. In a way that it almost made losing wars. We didn't learn from it. It's 40 years later. We're still doing the same crazy thing. War is never the answer to peace. The way to get peace is by peace, not by war. And so I digress. Clem Labine Jr. and what is his name? He's not Clem Labine Jr.
It is. It's Clem Labine Jr. Jr. It became Jr. That was the only thing we ever called him. Yep, Jr. Jr. Yeah, he was Clem Labine Jr., firstborn.
Is he still with us?
No. What happened was, sadly, around 2 years ago, he succumbed, believe this or not, it's okay, but I'm very friendly. I'm very close with Clem's youngest daughter, Kim. In fact, she endorsed the book. And Kim and I talk about it a lot. We see each other. We have a little ritual. Once a month we meet for lunch or dinner. And she was very helpful with the book. She really insisted that the book be dedicated to her mother, Barbara Degnan Labine, Clem's first wife, who passed away. But Kim and I meet often. Kim and JR were very close, the oldest and the youngest. And the twins in the middle sort of had their own life. It was just the dynamics of a family. It doesn't matter. But here's what Kim says to me. And about 2 years ago, JR passed away. He at the very end, of course, there were traumas from the lost leg that weren't just physical loss of a leg. They were induced diseases. Epilepsy was induced. He became a downhill skier. He became an inspiration to vets everywhere. But his was an unhappy life. He'd always been competing with Clem. In fact, Clem agonized that because Clem was a paratrooper, Jay had to join the bloody Marines to outdo him. So every family has these little dynamics and these competitions, and Clem always said, I knew he wasn't an athlete. I cried the night he joined the Marines, trying to finally outdo Dad. But JR passed away, and Kim's poignant remark to me, we had the funeral for him here. Kim's remark was, JR really died in Vietnam. It just took him another 45 years to admit it. In other words, what she was saying to me was he never was right. He never fully got past the trauma of Vietnam. It was it rocked everybody, rocked our whole community. We have a small town, and but he did his best. He was a terrific kid. Some of the pictures I post on those Dodger sites are of me and JR at the Dodger game, or hanging off a balcony at the Bossert Hotel. We used to stay at the Bossert with his dad, so it was. It was a loss. And JR also is gone. Clem and his son, both veterans, are both gone. And we're talking on Veterans Day. Yeah, they're both gone.
Yes.
But he was a great kid.
It is interesting that we're talking on Veterans Day, and it is interesting that we have a tie to Alan Fishman from Kittatinny Camp and from Brown University. That's an amazing surprise for me today. And I really enjoyed your company. I just
thank you.
I hope you'll come back. Tell us what it's like on the book tour.
I will
get some of your observations about that, and I am so delighted that we finally made this thing happen. I
am too, Ralph, and I'm sorry that it took me a few weeks to feel better, but I certainly didn't want to speak to you when I was under the weather. I wouldn't have giggled as much and had as much fun. Now I'm back 100%.
You did have fun, and I'm glad
I did. I loved my Clem, believe me. He read the obituary at my dad's funeral, and he was a much larger part of my life than I can put into words. Yeah. But I would love to talk to you anytime, Ralph. You're a gentleman, and you let me know when time allows. Now, I'm going to send to you, I guess I'll do it right through Facebook or whatever. I'm going to send you the last picture of Jackie ever taken at a speaking event. There are pictures of him emptying his locker, but this was a public appearance 8 days before the Dodgers sold him.
Yes.
And for those of your listeners,
he just wouldn't play for the Giants. He says enough.
No, he wasn't going to play for the Giants, and he had indicated in Woonsocket that he was still planning to play another year or two. So the trade to the Giants took it over the top.
I could probably explain to you, now that I think about it, the Maglie throwing the thing out the window.
Yeah. Okay.
There was such a hatred between the Giants and the Dodgers. He was just making a statement that, yeah, we're going to have peace. I'm going to be a teammate, but it's an uneasy peace.
You could well be right, Ralph.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And he was a serious and intense guy. So
Maglie, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll send you a picture or a link to a blog of mine that picture is posted of Maglie at the real Sal Maglie, a pose of him standing on the mound, glaring into the Dodger dugout. Do you know that picture I'm talking about?
I don't. I'd love to see that
got
picture.
His hand on his crotch, basically, and he's basically just telling the Dodgers
just
what
to do this.
To them.
Yeah.
If you weren't aware of the Giants-Dodger rivalry in those years, you couldn't understand how maybe Jackie couldn't play another year with a Giant uniform, no matter what. And maybe Sal Maglie couldn't have thrown that tray out and still remain Sal Maglie in his own head. And sit down with a Dodger to have as a teammate and a roommate.
He must have felt like he'd sold himself to the devil.
Exactly.
Now he has to sleep next to a Dodger pitcher.
And he throws a no-hitter. And he's carried off the field by Campanella and someone else. I don't remember who it is. Maybe it's not. In a Dodger uniform, and I'm a Giant fan who loved Sal Maglie as a Giant, and I'm 10 years old, 11 years old. Oh, life's a mind fuck, you know?
Yeah. It's what the Buddhists say. Maybe we never know what's coming. We never know what's coming.
We never know. Hey,
you know,
nice talking
Ralph, I'm going to leave you with one thought, because I read an awful lot of this discussion about the Dodger move to L.A., and no one has yet asked me, what did Clem think about the dispute between Robert Moses and Mr. O'Malley?
Very astute. You're very astute. All about Robert Moses.
He felt exactly what Carl Erskine still feels, because I speak to Carl quite often. They say that Robert Moses drove him out. That Walter. Now, this is just anecdotal from the two Dodgers that I spoke to most in my life. That Walter O'Malley couldn't have been nicer to his team. That he loved the Dodgers. That he helped Clem out. That he helped Carl out with his oldest son, with his youngest son Jimmy, who was born with Down syndrome. That Walter O'Malley was instrumental in building Dodger Town because he knew Jackie Robinson and others were coming. So it was hard to determine from what all the research I did who was at fault. But those who blame Walter O'Malley without realizing the hell that Robert Moses put O'Malley through, and I'm not every fight takes two, but it wasn't Walter O'Malley who deserted Brooklyn. It ain't that simple. Robert Moses made it easy for him to go. And so I wanted to say that, at least in the opinions of Clem and Carl Erskine, and me now, and Scott Simon, who wrote that great book, as I said, The Last Good Season. He did as equally good research as I did, Scott Simon. He says O'Malley didn't want to leave, and he's been bedeviled unfairly a bit. So I leave you with that. I'm going to send you a picture if you promise to read the sign that the bartender's holding over Jackie Robinson's head. Okay?
I promise. That,
all right,
that's
baby.
a promise I could keep. Thank you, my friend.
And send me the link to Maglie.
Around 1 second. Listen to how I end this episode and every episode I do. I want to implore you to keep your dreams wet and your humor dry. Keep your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting stations. and keep them off the laps of clerics that wear dresses. And everything will be better.
There you go, Ralph.
All right.
There you go. You know, Ralph, I admire I admire the consistency with which you stand. I really do.
I am consistent, and I'm appreciative too. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, Ralph, it's been really a pleasure. I hope we speak again.
We will. Be well,
okay.
And adios, everybody.
Okay, bye, everyone.